Hi, this is Kaylee with the Warrior Painters podcast. In this episode, Randolph Williams, a proud dad who's also a background painter in animation, shares the story of how he decided to quit his office job and move from DC to LA to pursue a career in entertainment. Randolph also has vast knowledge and interest in art history, and you can easily tell from this conversation.
I'm Randolph Williams, currently a background painter at Bento Box for programming for Fox. Right now I'm working on a show called The Great North. It's been announced. It's also worked on a show called Duncanville for the same company.
That's awesome. You were painting with us a lot for Warrior Painters, and you participate in a lot of gallery shows before. So we know you're a really good traditional painter too. Do you still have time to paint right now traditionally?
Yeah, I try to make time. I do some drawing every day, and I've been trying to get back into doing gouache painting. So I've been able to do stuff from home, but not so much like going on location and observational stuff. But that's for many reasons. But
Yeah, definitely not during COVID. So
right, definitely not now. And so I've just been finding other ways to flex that muscle.
okay, I think it's time for you to tell us more about your education background. How did you get into traditional painting?
Yeah, I studied fine art actually, and I've been into drawing before entering college. But with college is where I really got into, traditional painting and even digital painting. So I really was underexposed to a lot of that stuff. A lot of the content that I grew up with was like comics and stuff along those lines as far as entertainment art. But I didn't really consider it seriously as a career path until I got to college. And for college, I went to a place called the Corcoran College of Art and Design. It's no longer in existence as it was, but because they've been acquired or were absorbed by George Washington University. For the time when I was there, it was great, and then that's when I kind of got into a little bit of everything. So, but really learned a lot about digital work and started to redirect myself toward a career in that direction. But as far as traditional painting, I spent a lot of that time commuting like through subways. So I drew a lot of people on the train, and started getting into doing pastels and stuff on the train. And then I took a class that a professor, took us out to do some painting outside, and then that's when I kind of really fell in love with it. Um, I spent a lot of time in the library there, where I've found painters like from the Barbizon School and guys who were like, I guess, the impressionists. So it gave me a lot of different ways to attack the outdoor painting problem, and I was just really interested in learning. And that kind of just carried over to now, where I kind of fell into doing background art.
So you spend a lot of time in the library reading about those artists. Then you got into plein-air painting.
Yes, I spent a big chunk of time in school in the library just because I felt like there were so many gaps in my knowledge. When I was in school, traditional painting, especially representational work, wasn't really sought after. It kind of ebbs and flows in terms of its presence in the art world. It's always there, but a lot of the contemporary work is more thought based or conceptual, and I kind of had to fight that battle in school. But at the end of the day, that really helped strengthen my resolve because I was like, oh, I must be really into doing this traditional painting, even though a lot of these people may not respect it right now. And I was definitely a big fan of John Singer Sargent. So one of the main reasons why I went to my school is because it had a collection of art from my favorite period, like the Gilded Age, met with the early and post-impressionists. So it's like that whole span of time, I got to see all those paintings up close, and I actually got to work with the Smithsonian while I was in college. So all that exposure, it always kept me rooted in the traditional world.
And you said your major in that college was fine art?
Yes, with a concentration in drawing, and that kind of just turned into painting as I got more exposed to it. I guess through drawing as preparation for painting. I would do a lot of my sketches, and then my teachers would always be like, okay, you should turn this into a painting, take it to the next level. So in their perception, drawing is a beginning step to creating a finished work, which would be a painting.
Since you did so many paintings back in college, did you consider to become a gallery artist or fine artist?
Yeah, initially, I think I was on that track, but I kind of didn't want to be in something so, political, for lack of a better word. just having to leverage your personality with other people. And this is before like social media and all that. So it's like little did we know. But yeah, I was just thinking I wanted to be in a more of an environment where if you do good work, you just get rewarded for it. And it's more straightforward. Simply because I just don't have the time to be talking to everybody like that.
But you're great at socializing. Like you know so much. You always like teach everyone your knowledge about artists, about art history.
No, yeah, I enjoy it. And I even enjoy, like, back then I was doing a little teaching here and there. I mean, that's the other side of the passion, but I don't know. Things come in cycles. So I just do what my gut tells me when it's time, go in that direction.
Yeah. So what was the time like? Like when you fell into, oh, entertainment art or animation? How did you learn about this career path?
Okay, so prior to me going to Corcoran, a guy I know online named Kevin, he introduced me to another artist named Jamie Jones. Jamie eventually became my roommate, and then put me on to a lot of I guess, the world of concept art and guys like Craig Mullins and all those guys. And I was kind of aware of them, but like he was like a fanatic back then, so like he put me on like hardcore. So, but a lot of my teachers didn't really respect that work, unfortunately. It wasn't that they didn't think that the work was good. It just didn't see its value in the contemporary art world and its value in the art historical discourse. Looking back now, it seems like they were a little bit stuck in the past. I don't want to speak ill of it because I like learned a lot there, and I love the professors there, and I loved all the people I met.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The professors, what did they say to you about you going into like this concept art world?
They were like, "Good luck with that," because it seemed kind of like a fleeting career path from their perspective. To them, even though doing the traditional gallery painter thing wasn't necessarily a steady paycheck, it at least had a long history of respect in the art world. And they weren't all ignorant to it; just the core faculty kind of had that perspective.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So there are people who focus on foundation skills, and that skill set can translate to many different fields. That was a crowd I kind of hung out with. So for the most part, those people respected it.
Do you think there's a difference between the East Coast artists and the West Coast artists? Because it seems like it's pretty common for West Coast artists to be in the entertainment industry and also do some traditional paintings.
Yeah, I think that division, I mean, I can only speak from my perspective from like probably almost 10 years ago now, but entertainment doesn't have as much of a presence over there because there's no Hollywood. When I was over there, there's probably two major studios doing gaming, but that's really hard to get into. Looking at it from the East Coast, I don't think that many people have a good perception of what it's like to work in entertainment. And it's almost like, how could you? Just because until you get into it, it's really, you only see the residue and the best parts of it from afar, all the fun jobs, but you don't see like the day to day, like what you'd actually be doing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Speaking of which, how did you get into the industry and how did you decide to move to the West Coast?
I went to CTN basically. A friend of mine, I could probably say this now, the statute of limitations is up. He gave me his badge because he got a job probably like a week before. So he had planned on going to the expo, but he was like, since I don't really need to go now, you want to go be me for a day? And I was like, sure.
You were still living on the East Coast at that time?
Oh no, so maybe I should explain how I got over to the West Coast first.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that same friend of mine, Jamie, he had moved out. We were all living in the same crib, and he had moved out to work over here. I'm over there working in DC, doing acquisition software for government agencies. It's basically for the government funding systems. I'm on a completely different career path at that point, just because I had a aptitude for that sort of thing too. I guess I went in that direction, and those jobs are abundant over there. So I went,
Yeah.
started doing that stuff, learning it more on the front end, and then kind of getting into coding.
I didn't know you know coding.
Yeah, yeah, I was doing all that stuff. It wasn't that I was unhappy doing it. It just that I realized that life is short, and I was like, I'm not going to be as happy as I would be, with a lot of what ifs, and it was like temptation. So I was like, okay, I need to make a decision now. I need to break off and go try it. Try to do something that's a little bit more toward my interests.
How many years did you work at that like government funding place?
Maybe like 2 or 3.
Okay.
It wasn't that long, but it was enough because I saw a lot of the people around me started going to grad school. People were making decisions about the next step, and this is just after undergrad. So it's like, okay, I need to do that for myself because I don't want to be one of those people who get comfortable and then look back and 10 years went by and you're like, oh, I probably should have tried what I was interested in. Not to mention the idea that things as you enjoy them may not exist in that form forever. That also relates to jobs. Our job market is changing. Automation is a thing, not to mention all this COVID stuff. So, I just was like, okay, I want to do it now before things change too much.
And you reached out to your friend, Jimmy?
Well, yeah, he was always telling me to come out there, but I was kind of hesitant just because like I said, I had something already going, fresh out of school, but I was making decent living and I had things, so I'm just like, I don't know, I want to leave my things. But turns out I wasn't that attached to it. So he introduced me to another guy named Tim Ridley. I'm gonna name names in this, so hopefully nobody gets mad. But yeah, he was like officially the first guy I met. Just from a phone conversation, I got a place to live, basically. So I just was like, okay, I have that set up. Now here's the kicker. I was with my girlfriend at the time, who turned out to be my wife and the mother of my daughter now. So back then, one of the main reasons why I was sticking around DC was because my wife is getting her master's degree. She one day was like, hey, she got me a ticket to come to California because she knew that I really wanted to. And that was my plan. So I was like, okay. It was in July of 2011. I came out here.
Okay. Just for a short trip?
Nope, this was the move.
Oh.
Yeah, so this is off of the strength of nothing. But I just was like, I'm going to make it work. I had savings and I had an offer for remote work.
Did you move by yourself at that time?
Yep.
And Kate joined you later?
Yep. She came a year later.
Oh, okay. So she knew this was your dream to come here. So she wanted you to come first. And because you were staying there for her and she knew that.
Yeah, I guess so. That's pretty much how it turned out. And she visited as much as she could. But yeah, the first year was rough over here. I mean, it was great in a way because I got to dive into the work and go as deep as I've always wanted to. But definitely my standard of living dropped, on some level, but it's all good.
So after the first year, did you get a full-time gig somewhere?
Well, that brings me to the CTN story. So I fast forward, I get to CTN. I literally walk through the door and it's a guy standing there. He goes, hey, is that a portfolio in your hand? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, okay, cool. Can I take a look? And I was like, sure. And then he takes a look for a few minutes and he's like, hey, I like this. Do you want to come meet my partner? And I was like, sure. And then he was like, hey, you want to get a job on Monday? And I was like, all right.
What?
Like literally 2 seconds of me walking in. And then it was weird because the rest of the time I was there, I was kind of like, oh, okay, I kind of already got a job. But I'm still going to do everything.
That's funny. And how long did you work there?
Maybe 2 years. It was a game studio that also had a magazine. The magazine was called Blue Canvas, and it was a section studio run by Justin and Jimmy Yoon and Cecil Kim. I was always a fan of Cecil's work, and I didn't even know that was him when I met him. I was like, wow.
I mean, all the young people who are listening to this are going to be jealous because right now CTN is so packed. There's no way this happens.
Yeah, I think it was so early in CTN where, I don't know if that sort of situation could be replicated.
Yeah,
but hey.
Yeah. No, but you got good work in your portfolio. That's what sold you. But you had some luck in the beginning when you walked in.
Definitely correct. And one thing I did hear, and I'll mention this, and I don't know if things have changed, is, because I was showing my portfolio to a lot of people and they were like, one thing I really like is that your presentation looks different than everybody else's. They were like, you didn't go to Art Center, did you? And I was like, no. That's not to say that the other people didn't have strong work. It was just that they kind of were arranged identically. So he was like, oh, this catches my eye because it just didn't have the same rhythm. So
Hmm.
that's just something to mention, just in general,
Yeah. That was in games. Then how did you get into animation after that studio?
I want to say that there was a studio called ADHD that was owned by Fox, and they basically offered me some freelance. From the freelance, they offered me an in-house position. At that point, I was working at that company. I kind of had reached a plateau, and there was no hard feelings. But I was like, I'll just take this opportunity and see what can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Then I just went to that studio. I was there for a while, and then I became background design supervisor there. So that kind of gave me more of a reason to stay.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working on multiple shows. So I was like, okay, so this is a thing that has a bit more consistency than I thought as far as animation.
Mm.
But yeah, it happened relatively quickly. It just happened naturally.
Yeah, a bunch of other people have a similar experience. They went into games and then they went into animation afterwards, or the other way.
It's very true. I mean, you kind of build, I guess, status or clout in each field. For the most part, if you have good enough work, you can keep a door open, and that keeps food on the table. As far as when things can drop in animation, I might take a lateral step and go games or statue design, things like that, or toy
Statue
design.
design. That's interesting.
Statuette, like I did some stuff for Sideshow Collectibles. So
Hmm.
they do a lot of just licensed statues. We did Spider Man, we did some Star Wars stuff. That's fun. It's always good to have some variety.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And over those years, did you still have time to do traditional painting?
Yes. Because I can stay up forever. As long as you can stay up, you can always do an extra thing, packing that time in. So I guess I would just make myself do something that I could be fit in that schedule. So say if I only have 30 minutes, I'll create a 30-minute task.
How was your schedule like before for traditional painting? Did you do it every day, every week?
I kind of go through spurts of doing it like every day. So I go through a period of time where I'll say like I need to grow in a particular direction. I'll do it every day, but I'll try to at least do it a few times a week. Otherwise, I got a lot of trash I don't show anybody. Like I don't post it, just because experiments or incomplete ideas. Sometimes you have a perception of what's going to happen, and then it doesn't work out. It's a lesson learned type of thing.
Mm-hmm. So you still keep that schedule until now?
With the kid. Yeah, for the most part, yeah. I've been able to paint much more than I thought. I've been able to do everything way more than I thought. But truthfully, the coronavirus situation is what really changed things because, my daughter wasn't able to go to daycare, so there's no balance. So it's like I have to be present at all times. And we also have to constantly try to manage the schedules of like my wife still has a job. So somehow we got to fit in raising a kid 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
I guess it's also because you cut your commute time and your socializing time.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be way more helpful than it was, but that time gets absorbed into the ether. It's like I don't experience that time gained.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, 'cause my daughter wakes up at like 6 o'clock in the morning. That's when it starts. Most of my life, as I know it, my personal priorities get done after everybody's asleep.
Mm.
Oh, and some of that is freelance still, but I've also try to make sure I'm doing freelance stuff I want to do. Try to kill two birds with one stone. It's a personal piece and somehow professional work at the same time.
Hmm. So right now you have a full-time job and you're also taking freelance.
Yeah, probably not smart, huh?
And you also have a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Well, the thing was, when we first got word that we were gonna start to, quarantine people, and they hadn't really mentioned a work from home situation, I just assumed the worst. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna line up some freelance.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's because say I get fired or something like that, I want to, try to be a step ahead.
I think that's a responsible move. Yeah. But then you give yourself too much, you know.
Well, a little bit. I mean, and also it just was difficult because I didn't foresee how different things would be without her going to daycare and like all the other little ways that we steal time during the day.
Yeah,
But
yeah, it's tough. You guys are all heroes. So, how do you keep yourself motivated for art lately since you have so much going on?
well, that's a good question. I mean, I'm motivated because I have to be, and that's
Like
just,
pressure?
yeah, there's pressure. And it's also training on some level. I've kind of programmed myself at this point to just be constantly working. It becomes a comfort zone. I feel weird when I'm not busy. I enjoy having like a busy day. It does get draining, so you kind of need to unplug and like take time for yourself. And I don't do that as often as I should probably. But another way I stay motivated is just to acquire art books and try to keep expanding. I just got the Reed Schaefer book, so I'm interested in like diving into that when I have more time. Yeah, just things like that. Also, new music for me, I find motivating.
Mm-hmm. Do you try to do art with Kate sometimes? She's an artist too.
Yeah, we do art together. We have a collaborative painting downstairs. It's all three of us, and it's mostly for fun, just to give my daughter the experience of learning different mediums and playtime. I actually think it looks pretty interesting, so I might try to integrate that into another painting I want to do.
Wow, that's so cool. Do you have any favorite subject to paint lately? Or like just an art challenge you have for yourself?
Well, I've been trying to paint more portraits recently. Just a lot of drawing. I'm trying to refine my drawing and
Hmm.
just get better at designing.
Right, right. Let's talk about warrior painters. Do you remember how you joined the group?
Like how I got linked up with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I started painting with Angela. So it's like I was painting with a group like around Pasadena, and I would always keep running into some of the same people, and I think that we kind of just kept growing from there. And then when I met up with Angela, she said she had a group called Warrior Painters that was like in existence, that she kind of took a step back from at the time, and she was interested in kind of revving it back up. And that's when she, I guess, put together the Warrior Painters as we know it now.
And you helped us with the document. I remember you wrote an introduction for the group.
Oh yeah.
The earliest draft, it was from you.
Yep. Those are the good old days. Like, yeah, that was fun too. Like just trying to, because it's like possibilities were endless, and trying to get people into just painting traditionally. Because I'm also just into it from on a social level, but also just on a like I said, having an art historical conversation, things like that with people.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How do you like to have a community like this?
I think it's great, and it's crazy because I'll go to a new studio and people always mention the Warrior Painters. Oh yeah, have you heard of this? The Warrior Painters, and I'm like, no, you tell. Put me on. And, so it's like everybody loves this, and I remember like being in the office because a lot of the Warrior Painter ideas were kicked around. We're working at Warner Brothers together
Mm-hmm,
with
mm-hmm.
Angela, Stevie. We all shared the office,
Yep.
and
That's when we made things bigger, right? Like we got the first gallery show. It was
yep,
during
yeah,
that time. Yeah.
yeah, that was
And
awesome.
and the first CTN road trip. It was
Yep.
during that time too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I still have my demo painting from then. I was looking at it the other day, and yeah, it's like, damn, I need to get back with you guys because I was definitely painting more than I ever painted with y'all.
Yeah. You guys did lunch painting every day too, right? Mhm.
Hmm.
And then we went out every weekend to do more paintings.
Yeah, I always find that like whoever I surround myself with will push me to do my best work. So it's like competitive environment, you know.
You see it as competitive?
Well, yeah, I would say so. I mean, competitive in the sense of I don't know. Maybe I just think in those terms generally. I've been told I'm a competitive person, but hopefully not in a toxic way. I just
Hmm.
say it's more like, "Ooh, I want to try that." Well, it's like drive. It's like drives you,
Right,
but I
right,
don't.
right.
Yeah,
In a
it doesn't
positive
really.
way. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's more like that, not so much, creating anger against the individual. But yeah, it's motivating. It's just like in anything, when one person does better, everybody wants to do better.
Hmm, hmm.
Hope-
And I remember you and Kate both got busy after she got pregnant, right? That's when we started to see you guys less and less.
We got busy, and then she got pregnant. No, I was kidding.
That's true too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And then family things. There's always stuff that comes out outside of art that you got to manage.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was just a building time for the both of us because I was able to figure out a lot of my own personal issues and sort through some of that before like being a dad. I was always afraid of having a daughter coming up. Every reason, but I can't imagine, things any different than they are.
Aw, that's so cute. Do you guys have some like artistic expectations from her already?
Mm, I'm gonna say no, but probably a little. I think you can have an artistic disposition and apply that to anything, right? So even if she's an accountant and she has an artistic perspective with numbers, I think that it could be something like that.
Yeah, that's so true.
But no pressure.
I know you've been just sketching and you did a lot of gouache before and pastel as you talked about it. And what other mediums do you like to practice or do you want to get better with?
I'd say oil painting number one. That's always been my favorite. I think it has the most variety of all the paints in terms of what you can do with the surface and just the finish. Probably get back into doing some sculpture and even 3D stuff because I was into doing like some ZBrush stuff. To me, there's like a different subject I want to tackle with each medium, and I'm just not outside. Like I want to do pastels outside, and once I get out there, I'll probably be into it.
Okay, that's a good way to see it. Do you still see your traditional painting as your own like personal pursuit, or do you think it actually helps with your animation career right now?
I would say both, and it helps me refine my own taste and figure out what I want to be doing, which makes me make better decisions, both in the process of painting and also in picking jobs. So I have less friction that way, and things just happen a lot easier. And also, you can work out problems in your personal work that you can't necessarily afford to when you're on the job.
Right. What are some of the plein-air artists you look up to? I know you mentioned John Singer Sargent earlier.
But yeah, definitely my big three, historically are like Sargent, Zorn, and Soroya. Let's see, I like Jeremy Lipking's Plein-air work. Mark Boges, I think that's how you pronounce his name. And they're kind of, I would say, disciples of Richard Schmid. He's a painter who's probably my favorite living painter right now. And then there's guys like a lot of the French guys, Chris Monet. I like Isaac Levitin from the Russian side. So it's like I kind of pick a few guys from each region because on an art historical level, everything means so much and it has a different significance. But I like the Shishkins, Arthur Streeton. I think he's from Australia. And Edward Seago. Yeah, he's another favorite. I can name a few more living artists. I like Nathan Faust, of course, and Mike Hernandez. Big fan of those two.
Mm-hmm.
I'll come back to it because I have to think.
No worries. We need to schedule you to do a lecture then. You can talk about art history.
I'll be interested in that, especially considering there's not really an ability to go into galleries these days and like see the stuff up close. And I'm kind of having some regrets too because I'm wondering if I'll ever be able to see certain things. Just like certain shows come to the United States, like hard for certain work to travel, especially stuff that's in like a private collection. And also wondering how that space will exist from this point forward as we like social distance and try to incorporate because outside of like paintings, you have installation, different experiential types of art that people consider the space or, site specific art that people want you to interact with it a certain way. And that has to be reconsidered with how the space will change.
Yeah. And if we have another art period, this would be the social distancing art and the form would be sort of different too. I don't know.
Well, no, totally. Yeah, because, what sort of symbolism will be generated from this time period? Because you have different points in history that tie into art history, and then that spreads through all mediums. So, like whether it's like romanticism, like, there's a Baroque period, there's post-industrial, that creates a whole new brand of art. Yeah, I think this period will see how people adapt, and definitely having an online presence is probably more important than ever.
Yeah. There are a lot of studio artists right now. They have more time concentrating on art, but they have fewer subjects they can paint. It's quite interesting right now, I guess, for the art industry.
Well, you have the opportunity though. Each time you get presented with the problem, there's also an opportunity with it, right? So it's like, although you might have the same subject to paint over and over again, you might find a different way to approach it, and ultimately figure out something that you wouldn't have if you hadn't been in this situation. If we look at the impressionists, tackling a subject different times a day, you start to see it differently. I don't know, I think you kind of deconstruct it at a higher level. Yeah, like revisiting it.
Yeah. Okay, the last one. What are some tips you could offer for people who want to start learning plein air painting?
I would say, I think you could probably go online now, but for me, diving into the books was the main way because I got really into just the different ways of approaching art and how you could put these books side by side and see how two artists would tackle the same subject. So even on the art historical side, there's a certain period in the 1880s, everybody's doing all these Venetian paintings. You're like, why is everybody doing these Venetian paintings? And there's a commercial side to that as well, in terms of what was selling. And artists would go as far to change their palette and replicate the same painting, but change their palette when they would exhibit it in Europe versus, America. So all those things would fascinate me. For me, just deepen my love for painting. I guess how to turn that into advice would be to just find the things that motivate you, even if it's outside of art, but especially aesthetically, and try to find ways to communicate that through your art. I think plein air work in particular can offer you every type of challenge. So yeah, and that's how I tend to break things down. Just I look at a challenge and then I try to find a way to conquer it.
Do you have any books you recommend then?
Well, yes. Well, there's the Edgar Payne landscape book, the Edward Seago book. Another book that I really like these days is the Dean Cornwell. That's not so much about plein air painting, but he does as much for paint as anybody ever has. And this is something else I try to do is work that doesn't necessarily relate to the traditional world of plein air painting and try to pull that in and see how I can experiment with different things. An example would be like I like some of that Russian constructivist look, like the constructivism, and bring in like the boldness of that. And there were painters who had done that, like illustrators, but trying my contemporary version of stuff like that within the work. There's a million angles, so it's all about juxtaposition, I guess.
All right, that's great. Do you have anything else you want to say to the audience? A lot of them are students or people who want to get into animation or games.
Well, I would say that it's never too late to turn around. You can go down a path and you can find out that you don't necessarily enjoy it, whether it's the culture that comes with it or just the day to day. It wasn't quite what you expected. You can always take a few steps in one direction and try something else. There are a million different ways to slice this whole art thing. So there's something for everybody.
Thank you so much. I'm so inspired. I'm going to be an artist myself now.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. We love hearing from you. Feel free to write us a review on Apple Podcast or other platforms, leave us a comment on YouTube, or just message us on Instagram. If you want to support us, please consider donating on Gumroad. You'll find a link in the description. All right, see you again soon.